Hi, everybody. Welcome to the session. We are talking about the future of team building, and I'm talking about creativity and action. So what can we do to be active in the way that we're planning our team building with your newspaper, with your yearbook, with your magazine, with your team of any sort, even outside of the publication world. That is what we're here to do today. So before I dive in, I want to introduce myself. My name is Allie Jones, and I am a creative strategist for a company in Seattle called House of Sorcery. What we do is we put together all sorts of design assets and strategic thinking for companies that you've probably even heard of. Obviously, we've got Google and Facebook and Amazon, which should be on most of your radars. And then we work with more small companies and niche groups, developers and architects that think through a vast swath of projects and have a lot of design of their own, but they come to us to think about what is the exclamation point at the end. So my job in that role is to think creatively for other companies, but another part of my role is to think creatively for my own. So we're a team that started off at about 5 people when I joined the company, and now we're double that. So as we grow, we want to think about how are we keeping this small, cohesive feel when we have more people at play. And so outside of my day-to-day job with clients, I'm looking specifically at how do we build team morale within ourselves. And I'm going to bring some of these concepts that I've worked on throughout the years to this presentation to apply to your teams. Let's dive into it. So first is the idea that we want to make space early and often. So it's not enough just to have things pop up every once in a while, but it does take some proactive planning to make sure that what you're putting forth is effective. The first note here is early. So before the school year even starts, it's good to have some time with your team together. And that looks like a couple of things. For some people, that is a big retreat of some sort where everything happens all at once. But the drawback there is if somebody doesn't make it to that big retreat for whatever reason, they're suddenly already a page behind everyone else by the time day one rolls around. So I recommend doing a number of smaller get-togethers where people can have FaceTime and get to know one another, build inside jokes, build camaraderie outside of the pressures of work or deliverables or even education. And there's an opportunity for people to opt out if they can't make it to all of them without feeling like they're opting out of the entire team atmosphere. I would also want to recommend keeping accessibility in mind. So not everyone has the money or the transportation to get to these before school get-togethers. So make sure that you're also thinking about before the school year as far as even day one, what are you doing when everyone's in the same place to set the tone for the rest of the year? And I also, on piggybacking off of that, are looking at vision casting and crowdsourcing. So here's what I mean by that. I think it is important to get buy-in on a deeper level than just what do you want to do. So it's easier to perhaps ask, what activities do you want to do? What should we do for our potluck that we do next week? Or what holidays do we want to celebrate as a team? But even below that, there's an underlying notion of how do we get team buy-in to root ourselves in how do you want to feel? When I ask my teammates, how do you want to feel coming to work every day? There's going to be a variety of different responses. People want to have a good, playful, fun environment. People want to be able to trust their teammates. People want to actually get to know the other people in this company on a deeper level than just what they talk about in a work meeting. So my job then is to take those deeper level things and connect them to the activities that we do. So there's an underlying goal and purpose beyond just an activity that may or may not be fruitful in the end. And early also pertains to looking before burnout. So let's schedule time in the dead zones that sometimes don't always feel all that clear and free. But the times that are not up against tough deadlines and the time that we're not rushing around, let's use that time to both plan and implement really surprising and delightful things. So instead of having exclusively the set dates that people are already looking forward to, deadline parties, holidays, but just a random Tuesday when they students are planning to come in and just do their work, and all of a sudden there is some sort of celebration going on, that is going to keep people's spirits up so that they're not depleted by the time that a hard day hits. And then I also want to look at often. So for my team, we try to keep up creatively in a variety of ways. The first is figuring out how to collaborate constantly in sharing and communicating our inspiration. For us, that looks like this Instagram DM, and it is a running feed of sharing different posts that we find interesting. And sometimes they pertain to the task at hand, the projects we're currently working on, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes it's just a matter of sharing who we are as individuals and what we find interesting. Because we are very much so steeped in design, they're almost exclusively design based. But you know, this shirt, we're probably never going to make it, but it is fun and it could be inspiring to something else down the road. If it feels like too much to have everyone on board at the same time, maybe this is a place for the editors to get together and plan next year's yearbook. And then when it comes to space outside of the digital sphere, there could be a tangible corkboard for your favorite. So instead of sharing via Pinterest board or DMs, maybe you have a tangible on the wall corkboard where people can put up inspiring imagery or articles they really liked and wanted to share. And it's just a space where people are all having equal footing, coming to the table and sharing what is inspiring. Outside of that, let's set regular rhythms. So for my company, that looks like regular coffee chats where we're putting aside time that is exclusively for enjoying each other's company. And it takes the pressure off of work, and it takes the pressure off of constantly trying to be productive and resting for a moment and conveying to everyone that it's okay to not be go, go, go all of the time. And part of regular rhythms are already set in our society and the culture around us. So the birthday traditions and the pre-deadline traditions that I remember from my own high school yearbook days are still applicable, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel in every way. So here's an activity that I have for you is to do a team culture SWOT analysis. Do it at the beginning of the year and revisit it throughout. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And it's something that I learned in business school and did a million times over throughout it. And really what it is a space to take a deeper dive into how your team operates, or really how anything operates. But in this case, we're looking at our teams. And for me, that looks like this. I took House of Sorcery, my company, and split out its strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in the realm of how our team operates. For me, I am generally the person who coordinates our activities. So I really appreciate the participation and the gratitude that people give me after an event. So when we have a celebration or a special lunch or an activity that I set up, people say thank you, and I am encouraged to continue going. On the weakness side, though, this is for myself and the rest of us, is that we don't plan far enough ahead to do cool things and making connection a priority. So if we have a bunch of work that pops up, this connection time goes out the window and we're full steam ahead in our work mode. And that doesn't breed a good team culture. So dropping down to threats, that connects back to our weaknesses. So a threat that we have is that we could potentially get busier and not connect. And I want to keep an eye out for that. The threats are things that I want to have an eye on so that when those threats start to feel closer to home, we can step in and do something about it. And I also want to note, and this is something for probably all of us, is that there is a bitter sting to not everyone being in the same place. And there is a threat of using that as a crutch, to an excuse to not connect. And for me, I want to make sure that I don't make that the case. And then on a hopeful note is opportunities. And these are things that I see that we have dipped our toe into that we can absolutely explore further. And for us, it is digital collaboration tools, things like the DMs, but what are other places? Could we have a shared Pinterest page? Could we have a weekly meeting where we sit down and talk about what people posted? Things like that. And opportunities also pertain to our calendar. So what actual opportunities do I see on my calendar where we can bookmark time together, where we can see that there is some space and protect that space so we can connect effectively? I encourage you to do this for your team and to plan your activities and look at the rest of this presentation through the lens of these 4 window items. Next up is to make it personal. Your team is a group and a cohesive whole, and that is awesome. But it's also made up of a bunch of individuals that have their own preferences and stories and contributions. I want to encourage you, and I'm encouraging you to do a lot of things in this presentation, but I would encourage you especially to make it personal and to make it not just about the group all the time. And that doesn't have to be scary, and it doesn't have to take up all your time. Really, it looks like this. On the first note is goodies. So it's to note that people have preferences. It's to note that when you have some sort of get together and there's going to be snacks there, maybe do a poll and see what people prefer, or give a or B option, where do you want something sweet or something savory, and people have some buy-in. It also looks like goodies that are just popping up in the day-to-day. So if you're an advisor and you're handing out pencils and you know that one student really likes the color pink, then as you're handing them out more or less randomly, you can hand that pink one to him or her and affirm the connection that you have, that I heard you and I know that you have this preference, and I'm going to honor that individuality in you. The next note is recognition publicly versus privately. So this is deeply rooted in cultural and familial foundations. So in some cultures, there is very little public recognition, and it's seen as more embarrassing than it is constructive. And some people have that preference as well. And in other cultures, if it's not told to everyone, what's the point? And a lot of classes that I've been in with extroverted teachers want to hoot and holler and get everyone to cheer for the person being recognized. And that can sometimes feel like a torturous, not fun thing. And it takes away the whole point of the recognition and the award, which is to build somebody up. So it's good to take a poll, maybe privately at the beginning of the year or throughout the year, and ask, how do you like to be recognized? If you do something really well, do you want me to recognize you then and there in front of everyone who's in the proximity? Or would you prefer me to write you a note so you can have it and keep it? My third grade teacher had a system where she would have these little die cut notes and she would just leave them on your desk when you were at recess. And I kept them for a really long time and really treasured them because it wasn't as public and it wasn't as a big to do. It felt very simple, but for me, it felt really big. The next note here is solo versus group assignment preferences. As a teacher and as an advisor, your job is to give your students a variety of experiences that will translate to the real world. So you know there's not always going to be the ability for students to choose only solo work or only group work, nor is that beneficial. But there are some things that it could go either way. And I think giving an opportunity for both types of work can be really beneficial. Another note on that is there are ways to do the same activity in both ways. And I'll give you an example. There's a small group activity that I've done before where, in normal brainstorms in my company, we have a whiteboard and everyone's talking at the same time and throwing out ideas. It's a little more boisterous and good for extroverted folks. But there is an alternative, which is to put out a big piece of butcher paper and ask everyone to silently, for a certain amount of time, write out their ideas and their thoughts and respond to prompts. And then after a certain time limit is up, everyone shifts a couple of spaces over. So they're sitting in front of somebody else's notes. And then it's their job to respond and star and highlight and make connections to other places on the board, on the paper. And it's an opportunity to brainstorm and have at one time a ton of different conversations. But no one's saying a thing. And it's a space that people who are slower to process and prefer to write, they really thrive. And it can come to the same, if not a very similar result. Then lastly, as we're personalizing our team building efforts, is to think about accessibility. Like I said before, not everybody has a car, not everybody has the money to participate in extravagant things. And so as you're thinking about the rest of this presentation and how you want to adapt it for your own team, be thinking about specific people and what their needs are. And if you don't know what their needs are, ask very tastefully, but understand what people are going up against. And there's sometimes people aren't going to freely want to offer that up, but it is important to make your team activities accessible to the entire team. Otherwise, someone is going to feel very left out of the whole. So now you're hearing this and you're thinking, gosh, I have to do all this planning and I have to use up all my energy and I have to make sure that everything's personalized. And then you're like, well, gosh, might as well just spend a bunch of money trying to get all of this sorted out. And that's not the case. So I have some ideas here for how we can accomplish team building in a really cost-effective way. So the first one here, we're talking about reusable artifacts. This is the notion of having a single item that roves around the classroom and it goes from person to person depending on whatever it's celebrating. So the idea here is every time somebody publishes an article to the website, they get to hold whatever item it is, or whoever is the top scorer on some training sessions, they get to drink out of the special mug for the week, and then it goes back to the advisor to be washed and sent out again. You don't have to continue to give out things time and time again. That's going to cost you money as an advisor or as an editor team or whoever. You don't have to continually purchase more candy or treats or whatever to give out. You can have a single item that has some sort of special meaning within the context of your team that goes from person to person. And on that note, that item itself doesn't have to be valuable. It doesn't have to have a monetary value that makes it worthwhile. I had an AP calculus teacher in high school that had toilet seats decorated and posted all around his classroom. And I don't remember the origin story of why he had those, but what I do know is that it became a very meaningful object for him and to the students that gave him them at the end of the year. So he would tell the story at some point throughout the year of why there were a bunch of toilet seats around him, and it endeared people to the decor. And then at the end of the year, oftentimes classes would collaborate on how to decorate and sign their toilet seat to go up on the wall. The toilet seat itself is not a meaningful item. It's not necessarily a reward or something heartwarming by itself, but because of the inside stories and the collaboration from year to year to year, that meaningless item became meaningful. And that is the hope of these cost-saving hacks, is to be able to inject meaning into very cheap or free items that can have more meaning than perhaps something of more monetary value. And then lastly is to take advantage of the resources around you. Namely, I'm talking about newsletter subscriptions to companies you already purchase from or explore new ones. For me, Sticker Mule is a resource that I've been using recently. I get an email every week of one of their deals. What they do, and this is not an ad, is they create, or they manufacture, I suppose, stickers and keychains and magnets and all sorts of things that people can create custom designs and have them created with really quick turnarounds. And I keep on the subscription of the newsletter because they send out a deal that's often a really steep discount. And so whether or not I have something coming up for my team, what I can do is design a sticker with our logo on it and our special colors or whatever the customization may be. And I can have it made for a really great discount and have them on hand. So maybe you let a student as a reward design their own style of keychains that then goes to the entire team. That's a really sweet way to acknowledge everyone with a small token like a sticker or a magnet, and it is fully customizable. I recommend looking into all the places that you might normally get your goodies from and find out how they share discounts, whether it's their social media or newsletter or their website occasionally. Just keep perusing and you can find great deals. So we have gone through the idea of personalizing and being conscious of our money and starting early enough to plan. Now, that feels like a lot for one person. And so often, unfortunately, that load ends up on the advisor time and time again. So I want to uh, put my good vibes into the world that that's not going to happen this year. So let's talk about sharing the load. Everyone can participate and create a great space for team building. That is absolutely true. And perhaps there is a facilitator involved, and there is most success when somebody is taking the lead rather than having absolute chaos. But there are simple ways to make sure everyone has a seat at the table. A literal table could look like a potluck. I think the tale as old as time is people sitting together for a meal, and it can be absolutely the most striking and poignant and beautiful place that people can gather. I know in my own home and my friends and family, that's true. And let's translate that to your classroom. Sure, it may end up being a really big table depending on the size of your staff, but it is something that, providing that the safety precautions are in place, is going to be beneficial. So first off, make sure you publicize allergies so that no one has any health concerns. Sign up ahead of time so that you know all the bases are covered and you know if somebody does have an issue with being able to contribute, that can be addressed. And then I recommend you theme it out. And when it comes to COVID, maybe your theme has to be a little bit more creative. What if you had some sort of made up holiday of granola bar day and everyone brought a single pack of granola bars and you dump them all out into one big pile and everyone could pick another flavor or brand out that they did not bring? It's a chance where you're using all pre-wrapped objects that you're not going to worry about cross-contamination. It's a fun little snack and everyone gets to contribute as much or as little as they want. Maybe that is a running thing that you have in your group where you have a set snack day and you just go to the giant vat of snacks that people have contributed and pull something out. I don't know. That is from the top of my head. And I'm sure you can come up with something a lot better. If you don't want to, again, think about having to contribute physical things, let's talk about show and tell. Everyone's thinking back, having flashbacks to elementary school now, and you're not going to bring your favorite stuffed animal, though that's also an option. But I'm talking about the things that are in your day to day. For me, that is media. So your favorite YouTube video or TikTok or tweet, have an opportunity or a get together where everyone shares their favorite, maybe put a time limit on it. And this is great twofold. One, it gets people laughing and talking and having some common denominators as far as what media they're seeing. And it creates an opportunity for you to see what is going on in your brain, the brain of your teammates. So what kind of humor makes them tick? What kind of media are they consuming? Why did that TikTok show up on their For You page? And it creates a bigger conversation to get to know someone on a slightly deeper level. On that note, maybe something even less time consuming is a daily dumb joke. So the one that I cannot get in my head and cannot be replaced for whatever reason is, why did the toilet paper roll down the hill to get to the bottom? Yeah, no one ever laughs at that, but for some reason that's the one dumb joke that sticks in my head. All you really need is to do some Googling, find one you like, and have everyone go around the room sharing their dumb jokes. Granted, a lot of these are not that funny, but when you start hearing them back to back, I guarantee the smiles will turn into giggles and they'll turn into laughs, and it ends up being a very light, fun atmosphere. And again, everyone gets a chance to share something. And the pressure's off because they're not having to come up with anything original. They can just find something on the internet that resonated with them. And lastly here, hidden talents, and that's what my beautiful model on this page is doing either, I'm not sure if he's good at tennis or guitar, or I guess in this case, neither. But the idea here is to do a talent show with your team. What are some of the hidden talents that they can either show or talk about that you would have no idea existed otherwise? My one coworker, Melody, she is someone that I talk to every single day at work. And it recently came out when we were having this hidden talent conversation, is that she grew up in her younger years traveling as a professional choir, girls choir person. I don't really know what that's called. But the thing is, I had no idea. She was traveling all over Europe to perform with her choir. And that's an incredible thing that I had no idea was the case. So creating some space to show something that is not going to come up in everyday conversation or not going to be widely known is again going to instill a sense of closeness and going a little bit deeper into knowing someone's personality, preferences, and skills than you might have otherwise. And it takes the pressure off of any single person. So here is an idea that I have for how you can decentralize or at least take some pressure off of an advisor role. I recommend that you write a brief description on paper if you can, or send via email if necessary, to a student or a couple of students to take a lead in planning something. So you'll give firm parameters, things like timelines and budgets and approval necessities are good to have in there so that you're setting them up appropriately, a creative brief, if you will. And then after that, leave absolute room for creative freedom. Be available for questions if the students have them, but otherwise you get to be pretty hands off. One, this is going to result in things you probably never would have heard of, and it gives the student a sense that you trust them enough to come up with something good and that you're not going to be micromanaging everything that they do. Here's an example of what that could look like. We're looking at this hypothetical student, Jamie, who's been selected to put together a team acknowledgement award. That's pretty vague, and perhaps there's more clarification to follow up with, but perhaps it's just a vague phrase so that Jamie can come up with something all on her own. The idea here is that the mission will culminate, or the award will be revealed October 15th. Mission plans are due by October 5th. That gives 10 days between the first reveal of the mission plan to the teacher, that there are 10 days then to massage it or refine it or plan further before the actual thing happens. And then having a firm budget, and hopefully it's not coming out of the advisor's pocket for this one, nor the students. You don't even have to have a budget though. You can say the budget is $0, and I'm sure that students are, if given enough credit, will be able to come up with something good. And then something silly at the end, but make sure you have confirmation that they've received and are accepting the task. It should be entirely optional because there is a little bit of time and effort involved here. I've got to accept, email Ms. P with the subject line spicy enchilada, and tell nobody. Anywhere that you can put the James Bond theme song in the midst of this task, absolutely, I approve. All right, we're nearing the end here, and we have this last section, celebrate everything. So this is a motto that I want to impart on you and your team, and that is the spirit of celebration. And that's going to bring people together in lightness and in joy and in a positive manner that keeps driving things forward. The first level here is macro. So we're thinking big. We're thinking about the items that the world celebrates, that your school celebrates, that culture celebrates, that are easily accessible. My team, for example, when the rocket launch, or rather Perseverance, the Mars rover, I think it was, landed on Mars, we had a watch party, and it took not very long, and we just hung out and we talked about it, and it was a break from the work that we normally do. And it was a benchmark or a milestone of sorts of, this is a special day, and we made it special because we decided it was. It doesn't have to be Christmas or President's Day or whatever special holidays that are normally big in your day to or year to year calendar. And we're also looking at school events to make sure that the students that you're working with feel part of your school community, and participating in things that are already established, and that takes the pressure off of any individual within your publication. And then cultural and pop culture events. I remember the many math classes where Pi Day was celebrated with a pie potluck. And who says the math classes get to have all the fun? There's also some movies and songs and things that you can reference back to, provided there's a shared understanding, and use those as a launch pad for your own special events. So then from macro, we're going to jump to micro. And these are things you're probably already doing in one way or another, similar to the macro. First of all is birthdays, and this ties back to our individual acknowledgement section and how people feel seen when there is a narrower view on them. But there's also an opportunity to make it a lighter load and to give some respect to our summer birthday friends, and to group them into months or quarters or semesters, so that you're celebrating everyone within a certain time span at the same time. And that way, it's not a whole year of individual celebrations and the last day of school where June through September gets a little bit of cake. And we're also looking on the micro level for little wins. That's that artifact, having a single roving item that goes from person to person to celebrate a little win, or something that is unique to your group. And maybe there isn't even an item involved at all. Maybe there's a bell or a certain chant or cheer that everyone can collectively do when something special happens, when an article gets published, or when a deadline gets met, or when an individual reaches a certain step in their training program. Little things absolutely count. And here is my favorite section personally. So of all of the work that we've done so far up to this point, it is setting the stage for building your own path. So I'm going to give you 3 recommendations here of these make-believe celebrations and team building items that are going to create a sense of unity and cohesion, in a way that doesn't put too much pressure or time expectation or money expectation on any particular person. So I'll start here with the jacket ceremony. This is something that I started researching when I was seeing the timeline of our team jackets arriving. So we have these jackets that we got embroidered, and they were going to be coming, but I wanted to give them out in a way that was special and felt like this was something to celebrate our progress and our unity as a team. And as I was doing research, I found the white coat ceremony in the medical field. And in the medical field, throughout education of becoming a doctor, you don't get a white lab coat at the very beginning. You have to earn it. And when the ceremony comes for the white lab coat to be bestowed upon you, and to make an official step into the next step of your education and career, there is the transaction of getting your coat, but that also in return, I believe there's an oath and there's a code of ethics, and there is a set of cultural standards that you're agreeing to by putting on this coat. And the same happened for my team and our jackets. I asked everybody to recite a silly little creed that talked about the commitment to our company's core values. And so when you were getting the jacket, or when I was getting the jacket, or when anyone from our company was, they were not only getting a piece of swag that was cool, but it was also a spoken agreement that by wearing this, you're representing the company. And the same is true for your team sweatshirts or your team t-shirts, and your staff is representing your publication wherever you go, as long as you're wearing that. So there is a further level of involvement and buy-in when you put a ceremony around it. It doesn't have to be austere. It doesn't have to be very sterile. It could be a lot of fun. I think I made hot chocolate and we had breakfast during the ceremony, but it does create a sense of bigger meaning, going back to our very first bit about how do you want to feel? And this ties back to how I want to feel like my team is with me and for me, and we're in this together. The next one is secret monochrome. So the idea here is similar to Mean Girls, where they say on Wednesdays we wear pink. Uh, I don't at all advocate that this becomes an exclusionary tool, or the notion that if you're not wearing the secret monochrome color, you're not part of the team. If this seems like something that your staff would all buy off on, what you do is you set a color for a certain day, and as you go from class to class and as you participate in other uh, physical spaces, you look completely normal. And yeah, you have a monochrome outfit, you're wearing head to toe blue or head to toe green, as these girls are, but there is a sense of magic and a little bit of a clicking into place when you all arrive into your class together, because it goes from all these individuals in a huge group happen to be wearing the same colors to a room of a high concentration of that outfit. If I were wearing all gray and I walked into a room with everyone else wearing gray, gray outfits, groutfits, if you will, then it would be something that makes you stop and makes you look for a second. And as an individual in that situation, you can look around and see how we are a unified group. And there's something special and different about how we put together this colored outfit. But at the end of the day, we're all together on this. And then lastly is the notion of celebrating, or at least bringing lightness to hardship. So what happens when you make a mistake? How your team reacts to you is going to make a big difference. The underlying notion here is that I want my team to feel like they are supporting me, and I want my team to feel like I can make mistakes and I'm still going to be accepted, that there's grace here. So the notion here is that we are not ostracizing and we're not wagging our fingers at people when they have a mishap, when their computer crashes, when their battery dies, when something doesn't save. But we know that that's part of the experience of working in digital tools. So this centers around a gag gift that goes out when somebody has one of these mishaps. It's an opportunity for the advisor or the editor to say, you know what, this happens. Here is a reminder to everybody to save, to charge your battery, etc. But it's also a chance to lighten the load on whoever happens to be feeling this anxiety. So they can get some gross candy or prune juice, or maybe a little sticker or a button that says like first computer crash of the year. And not that everyone's going to be clamoring to try and earn that, but it is something to take the pressure off. And again, read the room, make sure that this is appropriate for your staff and your team. But the notion still stands to bring some lightness and grace to hard things. So this is just scratching the surface. I am so excited to hear how things go with you. Shoot me a DM on Instagram or send me an email anytime. I would love to hear if you tried out any of these ideas. And I am still somebody doing these things actively with my own company. So if you can give me ideas, that would be very much appreciated. Good luck. I am so excited to hear what you have tried, what you are going to try, and I will hope to hear from you soon.